I'm Mark Dresner, and this is Research TV, brought to you by the Market Research Event, the largest and most comprehensive conference in the world dedicated to increasing the business value of insights. Joining me today is C. Frederic John. He is the VP-elect of Esomar and also the former senior business leader of global market research for MasterCard. Fred, welcome to Research TV.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Great to have you. When we spoke earlier today, you told me that the industry can no longer rely on people sort of stumbling into the profession as we've done historically. Why is this important to you now?
I think it's important to everybody who cares about the future of our industry. We've been very lucky historically that we've attracted people, I'd say, out of three groups. Obviously, people with quantitative statistical skills were naturally attracted to this, and people with psychology or sociology backgrounds who didn't want to stay in the academic world found a place in the qualitative world, particularly with ad agencies for a long period. And then there was a large number of people, in which I include myself, who kind of fell into this and realized they loved it and never got out. Maybe they just never found the exit door. But the reality is we have benefited from these generalists who didn't go in either with a math or a psych background, but were able to learn the basics and then apply a lot of other characteristics and skills to what they were able to carry out in projects and to serve their clients. So I think it's very important for us, if we want to keep bringing in the generalists and the people who are very well suited for the skills that we need, to make an active effort individually or as professional groups or as companies to get these people to consider us.
What should we be looking for? Where do we need to shore things up?
I think disposition is more important than discipline. What really makes the successful market researcher is somebody with curiosity, somebody who likes to solve puzzles of one sort or another, who's interested in understanding how things work. And that could be someone who's studying history or political science or economics. Many of those fields emphasize that kind of thing. Our greatest contribution to business is essentially understanding consumer motivation or customer motivation. Getting at the what people do. There are a lot of other ways people can do that now other than through research, asking people how many, bottles of what kind of soda do they have in the refrigerator. We have scanning data, we have many other things. But understanding why people do things and ultimately why they may change or what may get them to change behavior, that requires people who really are trying to get at the nuts and bolts of what's driving human behavior. And again, anyone with curiosity and anyone who really wants to spend time understanding what data means and trying different theories out, building hypotheses. Those are the people we need. And really, almost any good liberal arts background or engineering background or science background is going to give them those basic skills that they need. And then you learn what you have to learn on the job.
Interesting. You've had a pretty impressive career yourself.
Thank you.
If you had to impart a tip or share perhaps a key lesson learned over the course of your career, what would that be?
I think the key thing is that you've got to have fun on the job. And I know we've all been on projects that we hated, that send us home depressed at night, and I get our spouses, not too happy with us because of those things, frustrating clients, all those kind of things. But ultimately, most of the time, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. And again, if you enjoy problem solving, when someone first brings you a possible project and you're thinking, well, what does this mean? What can we do with it? What kind of decisions can be made from it? There's a real element of, for me, and I think for many people, enjoyment in that. And there's also the people part of it. You're dealing with many types of people. I've had the opportunity of working with people around the globe, and that I always found very gratifying. So you're meeting people in other cultures and other situations, and that people connection is very, very important. Now, obviously, on either side of the fence, unless you're just a number cruncher in a back room, you're dealing with people, with clients, with colleagues, with associates. So people skills are important. And I think making the most out of those and making a project entertaining and fun. And, you know, I tell you, some segmentation projects are really, really a lot of fun because you're looking at a lot of data and different ways of things, and really people can get into it. Presentations can be fun. And you talked about skills before. One other thing that I definitely emphasize is trying to be a good presenter, and that means not just being able to line up a very scientifically rigorous and extremely boring presentation. I mean, you gotta look at the facts, but you have to be able to tell a story. And I think storytelling is going to become more and more an aspect of how we communicate, because researchers do not have a good track record in communicating their ideas and their recommendations in a way that people that really engage their audience. They can be convincing, they can be very scientific, but you very often don't have people leaving saying, gee, I really wish that lasted another 10 minutes. It's more, I wish that had lasted half the time. And I think we have to become better communicators. Storytelling is one of the ways of doing a lot of visual and other effects can do it. Always be able to back up what you say. It's not a time to pontificate, but it is a time, if you do have an opinion, to be able to express it. And that's something else I think that's important, that researchers tend to be very cautious. They tend to say, well, it depends, you know, and it's not so much margin of error, but they really don't want to commit themselves because they know that there's so many variables, there's unknown variants. And I think if we're going to be taken seriously in a more challenging financial environment, we have to be able to say, based on what we know, this is what I think we should do, this is what I think you, the client, should do, this is how I think you should do it. Really stake out a position. Now there's a risk in that, but it's, if you look at the people who are doing very well, like consultants and management consultants, they take a risk. They basically come out and say, you know, based on what we know, this is what we think you do.
Right.
And they have much better presentations than we do, much more colorful, better binders. They charge more money and they take it more seriously. And I think we have to go along that path itself. One other thing, and I know I'm backtracking here a bit, as a profession, we are in some ways not nearly as diverse as we should be. You can go to many conferences and you will see certainly a lot of men and women. You'll see relatively few people of color. And often when I go to an Esomar event, the only people of color I see tend to be from Asia and Africa. They're not Americans. And I think there's a challenge here that I'm not quite sure how to address, but I think it's something that we might ought to consider. There's certainly been a lot of emphasis on Hispanic marketing, and I think that is certainly coming along in this country. I think the number of African Americans engaged in opinion research and particularly in marketing research is a relatively small proportion. And I think that's something that people may want to consider.
Great. Fred, thank you for giving us a lot to think about today and sharing.
My pleasure. I'm glad I could be here. Thank you.
It was great to have you. On that note, that concludes this episode of Research TV. I'm Mark Dresner, and you just heard the Insight Scoop.